Thank you, Chairman. We've received apologies from Councillor Placey with no substitute. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. We've received no such questions.
So thank you, Chairman. Yeah, so it's that time again. It's gone quick the last 12 months. And I'd normally say some few bits and pieces, but then I find out I've stolen your thunder, so I won't sort of say too much. So we've got the covering report there as well. So it's a follow item, which hopefully had a chance to go through that. We will probably just have a chat about the recommendations because of the work where we are in terms of finalising. Because the backstop date is actually next Friday, so we have got time still to publish and work is ongoing. So if I'm not careful, if I carry on speaking, I'm going to steal your thunder, so I'll stop and hand over to you guys if that's okay.
Yes, of course. Thank you for having us this morning. As a reminder, my name's Sarah McKean and I'm your engagement lead, and Jodie Preston's here. She's your audit manager. Um, we've brought 4 papers to today's meeting to cover our external audit of the financial statements for the year ended 31st of March 2025. So those 4 papers are our year-end report on the financial statement audit, our auditor's report on the value for money opinion, and then the draft templates for the management representation letter and the draft template for the actual audit opinion itself. So I'll take the papers as read, but I am going to go through each of them and pick out a few key highlights, and then we'll be very happy to take questions either as we go or at the end, whatever you like. So I'll start with our year-end report on the financial statements audit. So in that public pack supplement, it's page 40. So there's a few key things to highlight. So firstly, and as planned, as communicated at the beginning of the audit, we're still in the stage of the rebuilding assurance journey where we're having a disclaimer of opinion. We have provided all the details of that on the first couple pages of that report. But even though we are having a disclaimer opinion, I do just want to say we've had a really positive audit result this year. We've been able to build back assurance on quite a few additional areas of the accounts. So council dwellings valuation, all of your short-term debtors, most of your short-term creditors, and all of the income in the collection fund account. So that means there's really only 4 areas now where we haven't built back assurance. One of them is the land and buildings in the general fund. And based on our conversations with management, we think we will be able to do that in the 25-26 audit, which is fantastic. And then there are 3 balances which are much more historic balances. So the way that we'll be able to resolve those is through our completion of the Build Back Assurance work program. We've been able to make a start on that work program over the past couple of weeks, and there's a little bit of an update on that on page 27 of our paper. But just the key highlight to note is we think we'll be able to finish phase 1 of that program by the end of April and provide you with a report on phase 1. And then from there, we can have a conversation of where we want to go with phase 2. But I just want to pause there and say a really, really massive thank you to Richard and his team, because we've basically been able to do every single audit procedure we set out to this year. And that is very much thanks to his team and their support and their responsiveness throughout the whole process. So really big thank you, Richard. So just to cover a couple of the audit findings from this year. So on page 33 of our report, we've set out our uncorrected audit adjustments. And we only have one uncorrected adjustment this year. It's a judgmental difference between our pensions actuaries and your pension actuaries on the assumption around salary increases that goes into the calculation. It's the same as the difference that we had last year. The amount is not material to the audit, and it's not a factual error, it's just a difference in opinion between two sets of actuaries. So as a result of that, there's no impact on our audit opinion around that. We're just reporting it to you for information. We have had a couple of corrected audit adjustments this year, but they've all been presentational in nature, so affecting disclosures like the remuneration report, nothing that impacted the actual outturn or balance sheet of the council. And as far as control findings go, we had no new control findings identified this year. We were able to close off 3 of the prior year recommendations, and there are 4 which remain outstanding, which are included there on pages 35 and 36. The key one is the one around the land and buildings in the general fund, so the floor area is there, and as I said, we think we'll be able to resolve that in this coming year's audit, so that's really good. I was just going to pause there and see, does anyone have any questions on this paper before I move on to the second paper? So next I just wanted to cover the management representation letter. So that's on page 82 of the pack. And it's a very standard template letter. We haven't requested any customized representations or anything like that this year. And that will be the letter that Richard will sign alongside the accounts on the same day of the accounts and provide to us. And then the draft audit opinion, I think, got all the way to the end of the pack. So it's actually on page 270. So that's the audit opinion that we will sign. You'll see there's a paragraph in there titled the basis for disclaimer, and that lays out the detail of what I've kind of just mentioned about the areas that we have gotten assurance over, the areas that we still need to get assurance over, and that issue around the land and buildings is covered there as well. But yeah, for audit status wise, we can say the audit's substantially complete. I know Richard and his team are just hammering out a couple 1K variances in the accounts, but as soon as that is done, those accounts are ready to sign, in our opinion, and we're very much on track to be able to sign off our final report next week ahead of the backstop date. I will hand over now to Jody to talk about the VFM report.
So I'm going to speak you through our auditor's annual report, which is page 18 of the public pack supplement. So we shared an interim auditor's annual report with the Audit Committee on the 25th of September 2025. This outlined our risk assessment findings over value for money. So that includes financial sustainability, governance, and improving economy, efficiency and effectiveness. And we didn't identify any significant risks at that point. Today we're going to present our final auditor's annual report. So just to start with page 4, which summarises our findings, and page 5, which outlines actions we can take as part of our wider powers under the Local Audit and Accountability Act 2014, but we have nothing to report in that respect. So then moving on to page 7, so that just outlines our basis of disclaimer opinion, which has already been outlined by Sarah. And pages 8 and 9 also summarise our procedures and findings for the key financial statement audit risks, again, already presented by Sarah as part of the ISA. So just going to take you through VFM. Page 11 onwards summarises our value for money findings, and in line with the interim AAR, we didn't identify any significant risks or weaknesses as a result of our work. On page 17, we just followed up on the previous year's significant weakness in relation to governance. So our recommendation has been partially implemented in 24-25 through the conclusion of the investigation and the review. We raised one low priority recommendation in 24-25 regarding external benchmarking. This was presented as part of our interim AAR in September, so there's been no changes. We also followed up on the previous year's performance observations on page 20. There has been a couple of updates in management response between September and February, so those have been incorporated into the current status column on that page. And that's everything, so let us know if you have any questions.
Only a couple of bits. Only a couple of bits. One. Yeah. Thank you for your thank you, and thank you to you. I think we have generally got a good relationship, which other authorities don't seem to have, which is bizarre. So that works really well. And just the assurance for the audit committee is that the land and buildings issue, we've talked about that before around that phased approach. It's nothing new. We're working on that. We will give you assurance during your normal sort of reports, table of outstanding issues reports. We'll give you updates about that as well to let you know how we're going on that one, to give you assurance that we are resolving that as part of the 5-6 position. And I've just got, I think, because we haven't concluded the position today, we've asked you to sign an authorised thing. So I have got an amended recommendation, which I'd like to table directly at the meeting. So let me know if it is a good timing to do that now, because it's recommendations as written. Are you happy if I, because basically I think because we are just a few bits and pieces to resolve, what I'm suggesting as, so A to E in the recommendations on page, what page are we on? Sorry, on Chairman, it's on the to follow item, isn't it? It's on the to follow item pack. So we've got recommendation A to E. So I'm not suggesting any changes, so as written, but and add a recommendation F, which is that subjects to A and E above, in the event that changes to the statement of accounts, AGS, or the external auditor's reports are required following the completion of the external audit process, agrees a delegation to the audit committee chairman and corporate director of finance and IT to consider and approve any required amendments before publication onward signing as necessary, which hopefully covers everything: letter of representation, the AGS, the accounts. So we will be sort of tweaking bits and pieces as early as possible next week for final publication. So it's just that delegation, just to kind of a process thing that we can actually provide the accounts and conclude that next week. So long words, but basically it's really asking for delegation to the chairman and myself to approve those final small amendments.
Yeah, so it's just about the amendments, basically.
Yeah, small stuff, only small bits and pieces. If there's anything major, we'd have to review. But what we're hearing there is nothing major. It's all sort of small little bits and bobs we need to resolve before publishing by the backstop date of next Friday. But hopefully we do it in advance of that one. So the idea is Wednesday, isn't it? Wednesday is a plan. So, but we have got the backstop dates. So it's got to be done by next Friday. But the plan is to do that ASAP next week.
Okay, so I'm happy to move that. Are members in agreement? Do I have a seconder? Yes. Yes. Show of hands, please. Thank you. Yeah, I think we're happy with that. So yeah, we'll move forward from that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. My report is broken into 3 different reports, really. So I will take you through each section, and then I'll probably take questions after each element, if that's all right. So the first part of my report is the normal periodic report that you get. So all of the work that we've done since September. So in that time, we've completed 7 audits. They have all received what we'd call an adequate level of assurance. So there's no significant, no major issues that have come out of them to report in. We've had some moderate findings and things to talk that we, as we spoke about before, we'd manage that with the services, and if there was any issues to escalate, we would raise them back here with you at any point. So the audits that were complete in that period were corporate governance, housing strategy and homelessness, environmental services, emergency planning, corporate complaints, members' conduct and expenses, and treasury management. And like I said, there's no issues there that we've found to report. So quite nice, really, to not have to bring anything to you. Is that for once? I don't know. So the other part of the periodic report that we normally go through is the previous findings. So before, we'd raised the issue around no contracts being in place in within our housing services or housing repairs and maintenance area. Damien's come in the past and given you an update on where they are with the changes that they're doing, and I think Damien is going to give you another brief update because he can explain it better than me in terms of where they're at. So I'll pass you over to Damien. So it's around the disabled facilities grants, I think, and your housing repairs and maintenance contracts in terms of what they've done since September. When was your last year? I can't remember. September maybe. So pass you over to Damien.
Feels like I'm here on a very regular basis. So whenever the last time was, I was here. In relation to the DFGs, we've moved them across onto the term maintenance contract, which, as you know, is a tendered contract and goes through the appropriate routes for it to be let. We are still using tender processes for more specific significant works where we're adding extensions to people's homes where they need adaptations that beyond the sort of normal grab rails and other bits and pieces. So that's going through a route where, you know, it goes through proper channels and is able to be let to people that have gone through that tendered route. So I'm sort of quite comfortable with where we are on those at the moment. It's no longer disaggregated in such a way. It's pushed through proper contracts. So I'm comfortable on that. In relation to the other contracts that we discovered that hadn't been let through proper route, again, because of the nature of those contracts, they really should have been pushed through the term maintenance contract, which is what they have now been done. So I think once we discovered it, it was a rather strongly worded email from me to my then manager about what I was expecting to happen. That has happened. So all of those works that should have gone through the term maintenance contract now have gone through the term maintenance contract and been managed through that contract. That contract is subject to performance review, it's subject to KPIs, and is also subject to an improvement plan that we have working with that contractor as well. So on that side of things, I'm a lot more comfortable that we're doing the things in the way that we should have been doing them. I do understand why the team did what they did, but it was wrong, and we addressed that wrong as soon as we were made aware of it. In relation to contracts that had been let but had expired, one has been resolved. I won't go into the detail of that, it's probably not appropriate here, but we have a temporary asbestos contract in place now whilst we work on a more long-term contract, taking LGR into account, but also that one becomes a little bit more complicated as we're going through framework agreements to discover companies that can do exactly the right thing for us. So that contract is let on a 6+3 month, so that's 6 months to allow us to, but if we need an additional time, we've got an additional 3 months that potentially takes that to 9 months. So that allows us to get all of our contract specification in place and allows us to go through the framework agreements to find appropriate contractors that can deliver that asbestos work for us. So that, I'm comfortable with that, and I'm hoping you'll be reassured with that as well. The two remaining contracts was a lift contract, which is relatively small values but still needs to go through appropriate channels. That's got to a point now we're just about to go out to tender on a framework agreement for that, so that's been met. And then the final one was the electrical modification contract, which we have just finalised the specification on that. That's a bit more complicated because it involves leaseholders, and leaseholders have the right to be consulted, and that consultation adds an additional 90 days to any contract work that we look to undertake. So specification is currently with our partners at Essex County Council Procurement, who are just checking through it to ensure obviously it meets all the correct criteria, and once we've got that, we then start that process of consultation with our leaseholders. And then once we've gone through that initial process, we can then go to tender. Once we get the tender back, we continue the consultation with leaseholders. And once that consultation is complete, we can then let the contract and move forward on that one. So I'm hoping that gives the committee assurance that we found those issues out. We addressed fairly immediately within a 2-week process the bulk of the things that weren't subject to contract. They're now sitting under the term maintenance contract, and the other 3 are being resolved in time. They are under contract, albeit that those contracts have expired, but we are working our way through those to address that as well. Happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Damien. I missed. What about disabled residents and then changing, obviously, residential places to accommodate disabled residents? So is that is it what area would that come under? Would that come under just maintenance or?
A bit of both. So if it's relatively minor work, we can carry that out as part of our normal repairs function. If it's sort of significant disabled access work or extensions, new bathrooms, because people have reached a point in their life where they can't use stairs and bits and pieces, then sometimes we have to build a new ground floor bedroom with bathrooms and other bits and pieces. So that then would come under the DFG element, although that is all covered from the HRA. So it sits within that general HRA budget. We have a specific heading for disabled adaptations.
Sorry, can I and then how about, I think I've spoken to you or Andy before, about terminally ill residents. What's would that come under the disabled, or is that a separate section?
That's a difficult one to answer, really, because there'll be multiple people that would support people who are heading towards the end of life. So we would do adaptations to buildings that would be suitable, but if it was then needed to be supported through the NHS or others, they would obviously provide that relevant support. So we would work together in that respect. But each one of those would be viewed independently as each of those people came forward. There's no generic approach to it. You couldn't have a generic approach to something like that.
If somebody's living in a you know a normal house as such, and then they be or disabled or terminally ill, how would we handle that? Would we look to adapt where they are, or would we move into, if possible, into a house which has already been adapted, which is already in our stock?
Again, a difficult one. Predominantly, we wouldn't look to move unless we had something specific, because we don't carry spare stock, as you know, and we have quite a significant waiting list for our stock. So adaptation, where we work with our colleagues in other areas in health to identify what's appropriate adaptation to do, we would look to do as part of the DFG work. Although if it then was about quality of life, we would have to explore that and look to see what stock we had available at the time. Again, it's really difficult to give you a specific answer because it would be unique to each individual case. But we don't hold spare stock. It's not as if we've just suddenly think, well, great, we can move Damien here because that's available. That unfortunately we're not in that position to be able to do that. So it's more likely that we would look to adapt existing. But as I say, we would work with other agents to see how we could to help the individual.
Thank you. In terms of the issues that you have had and the processes now set in place, the frameworks, the contracts, are there still things that within the service that fall outside of that? What risk is there of people being able to fall back into bad habits, and can you offer reassurance in respect of that not happening?
That's a really good question. Yes, I think I can offer reassurance because what we've done is produced a document that outlines all of our contracts, dates when they start, dates when they expire, and more importantly, who's responsible to ensure that that's moved through. We are in the middle of a process of churn with officers as well. So whilst that creates its own unique problems in how we backfill those posts, it does allow us the opportunity to review what we do and how we do things. And as part of that moving forward, I have a monthly meeting now with my surveyors where we talk about lots of topics and we talk about how we got to this position. That was my last meeting. And the implications of how we got there and what that was and how the impacts of that upon themselves and other people that have to come and talk to the likes of yourselves and other sort of council meetings. So yes, we are having those conversations. People are aware of, as I said earlier, I understand why they did it. They did the right thing in the wrong way. So it's understanding to do the right thing in the right way and how we do that. And that's part of that churn of individuals. And as we get new people coming through, we can embed our governance, we can embed our financials so they understand the correct way in which we should be doing things. But I am having those regular meetings with my surveyors as well, so they understand and they get an opportunity to ask me questions about how we should be doing things as well.
So that's the first part of my report, and as I said, Damien definitely explained that better than I could, and you can see how complex that is and how diverse the contracts are that they have. The next part of my report is the anti-fraud and corruption strategy, which is what we bring to you every year to get you to sign off and agree. We have had an update in that this year, which I don't know if you've got it in colour, but it would be in red. You can see the bits that I've changed. So within that strategy, every year we will look at what we call the Fighting Fraud Locally report, which comes out from, it's made up from SIPFA, from other government bodies, private sector, and it looks at fraud nationally across what's happening, what's the topic at the moment, what's going on, and then we can then look at what they're doing and try and embed that into what we look at, what we do, and include it as part of our strategy. And the new sort of buzzwords that they're using at the moment, they call it the pillars of anti-fraud, which is to prevent, pursue, protect. It's similar to what we've done in the past. It's the same sort of process, but we've updated the policy to reflect what is currently being talked about on what we should be doing as an organisation. So I've added those elements in there. I'm not concerned at all. We do a lot of fraud work, a lot of anti-fraud work anyway. So, and it's embedded in all of our audits in terms of looking at fraud controls. So, again, it's just updating our policy or our strategy, should I say, just to make sure it's relevant and it's up to date with what's going on nationally. And the other part of that I have updated as well is to refer to the Economic Crime and Corporate Transparency Act, which came in 2023, which essentially states that organisations over a certain size have got a duty to prevent fraud, and it comes and if you don't, or it's proven that you're not doing everything you possibly should do to prevent it, it can come with heavy fines, criminal liability on chief execs, directors, and this is both public and private sector. So again, we need to refer to it, but in terms of the work that we do, we're not concerned about whether or not we would ever be in that bracket of not doing our duty in terms of preventing fraud. So again, it's just to update the strategy to make sure that everyone's aware of that. These are the things that's going on at the moment, and to just reflect on our work as well. So that's the strategy that we've updated, and today I suppose I'm looking for you to approve that or be happy with that, or if there's any questions around that at the moment. I can take some questions around the strategy, but we've also got the fraud risk register in the report as well. It's on page, I'm trying to find what page that would be. 60, I think it starts from 55, page 55, which is, so we now provide a fraud risk register, which I think at the last committee I brought that along to you without any mitigation. So there's no controls. We'd highlighted what all the fraud risks were that faced our organisation. We've now got the mitigation in there as well, so you can see the controls that would prevent such threats from happening. And a lot of that is embedded in our audits. A lot of it's embedded in the anti-fraud work that we do and the fraud awareness work. You can see all that. And I think the good thing with this now is that we can show you in terms of give you that assurance around the work that we do to cover those risks. So, for instance, procurement fraud is one of the risks. So we will do a procurement audit. Part of that is looking at fraud controls around procurement, and that's testing. And I come back to the committee and I give you assurance over that audit. So we can now track that in terms of how you're getting that assurance, because I think we've talked about in the past, it's okay having a strategy, but how are you putting that into action? And I think this is that sort of thread. This will give you that thread of showing, well, this is our strategy, this is the work that we're saying we're going to do, and now we can actually refer back to you and show you how we're preventing those risks, what work is going on. And there will probably be gaps, because as we've talked about before, we can't be everywhere. Our audit plan is based on sort of a periodic time, so there might be some areas that we don't look at in 1 year. But you, as a committee, may say, if I give you that information and say, I can't see anything around insurance. You haven't done an insurance audit this year. What is there? That's at that point you can maybe ask for some information on what's been happening that year. So it will also highlight where there might be some gaps in our assurance, which I think we said that we'll give you every 6 months an update on the fraud work that we do as well. So again, it all feeds into showing you what we're doing to help to achieve what our strategy says that we will. So I'm happy to take any questions around that at all.
Just sort of picking up on what sort of Craig said there, and it's on the back of the risk management training we did recently as well around assurance, wasn't it? We did a lot of work around assurance. I think, Craig, you touched on it there as well, and we had a conversation, didn't we, around take the mitigation actions on the risk register. It's all well and good having a control in place, but people have got to follow it. You can, like daily reconciliations and prompt banking, that's all well and good, but do we do daily reconciliations and prompt banking? I mean, that's the question. So I think we talked about having to bridging the gap. So we've got mitigating actions and give you that assurance that they're actually effective and ongoing as part of this, part of your update. So as Craig said, you do that as part of your audit work anyway, but also we're just trying to bridge that gap to give you just that high level of assurance that those activities are ongoing. We'll work on that and bring that through, and that'll probably evolve and get better with your help and what you want from us as well to get that assurance that things are okay. So we'll do that. The first one's probably September, isn't it? We'll probably bring one through in September with that update. So hopefully that's gives you an extra layer of possible assurance.
Not with regards to this work, because I think we, as auditors, we've got to record everything anyway, all the work that we do. So I suppose it's just trying to pull that out for you in a way that it makes sense to you and that you can get that assurance. So and that's what we're trying to achieve, is just that each area is complex in its own right. So it's how do you then still get that assurance that we're covering everything that you want covered for the year, for that period. So again, as Richard said, it's probably a work in progress, and we might adapt as we realise that maybe that didn't work, but you might want something else.
Thanks, Craig. And with the risk register, is any of this work going into LGR?
In terms of where we're at the moment, I think we're all looking at the minded to decision and waiting to see that. But when it comes to fraud and audit, I suppose they both kind of go hand in hand. I'm part of the Essex Audit Group, which is where all of the heads of audits across Essex get together. We talk about our problems, like counselling session, I guess. And I suppose we've all agreed that it doesn't really matter at the moment that who you're with, because in terms of the work that we do, there's a difference in the work that county councils do than what districts and boroughs do. And I think we are in agreement there needs to be some kind of skills transfer, because it's a niche area. We all seem to know each other. There's not loads of us, so I think no matter what the outcome is, we're all going to be probably working with each other at some point along the line in one way or another. So I think over the next however long, we're going to look at that and look at how we can have sort of maybe not away days, but training days for some of the auditors, so that they can see both sides and understand how that works. So I think that's the things that we've been thinking of, but there's only so much that we can do at the moment until we've got that minded to decision and knowing who your partners are and everything else.
Thank you. Yeah, and you mentioned LGR, and I think it goes through our minds all the time now, doesn't it? Actually, how is LGR going to fit into the complexities of what you're already doing? What adaptations will need to be made? And it's interesting that if you're in a room and you're talking to your peers around how LGR fits into what you're doing. Have there been any risks highlighted in relation to internal audit plans and the impact of LGR?
We have, yeah, we've had it more informally more than formally, but I think one of the things that we were all agreed on is that once the minor two decision comes, then there's going to be a lot of work to progress into the new authorities, and I think there's a risk that we potentially, in terms of our statutory duties that we've still got to achieve while we are tendering district council and all the separate organisations, we've still got to monitor that. We've still got to be part of make sure that happens. I think there's a role there for internal audit to keep an eye on that and make sure that that happens, because you can get pulled away with LGR and everything else. But then there's also that element of providing advice around risk and those areas that might be upcoming. But I mean, this is my view. I haven't agreed this with anyone yet, but there's just discussions that we've been having as things that we think are some of the bigger risks when an organisation essentially transforms is what can be missed, and we've got to try and make sure we don't miss anything. We can capture everything in terms of that. So, and it's not about having a go at management or anything else like that. It's just a case of being that critical friend in terms of that period of time, because it is going to be a busy, difficult time, I think, for everyone.
Yeah, just to say that you'll be pleased to know that there will be a separate risk register, a separate risk for LGR, and I think with the AGS actions as well, you've got an incoming council, you've got outgoing councils. I think a lot of work, as Craig said, that minded to decision will focus the minds, won't it? Focus the minds, and I think bring that forward during the year, and I understand that probably be something led by our monitoring officer, Lisa. We'll bring that forward, and the assurance you need around that. We'll work with you to make sure we're providing you the right information to tell us what you need from us to get that assurance via several risk registers, but hopefully, again, a balance in itself to make sure you don't get lost within information as well, and we make sure we report and pick up things timely and as we can, but with your input and assistance.
Just to make a comment, really, I've written down here the long and winding road, not because it's a record from my youth, but it has been a long and winding road, isn't it? But the assurance what you've given us this morning has been very, very, very positive, with Sarah and Jodie as well. So carry on the good work.
So my next part of my report is about the Quality Assurance Improvement Programme. I think you've probably heard me talk about this a number of times over the years, and it's where it's essentially an audit of ourselves. So we've got the global internal audit standards that we must comply with, which used to be the public sector internal audit standards, then changed to the global standards. We were waiting for SIPFA's view on it, which came out in April 25. And we've now done our assessment, self-assessment, and you can see an action plan on page 63, which is sort of the areas where we don't feel that we meet, and a lot of that, for me, it comes around training. So we previously, that public sector internal audit standards used to say it's the head of internal audit must be assured that their staff are satisfactorily trained, has the right ethics training, has the training I need for them to deliver, really. But that was kind of it. It was up to me. But now it's very, very clear in terms of we must record everything. So we've got to keep records of all the different training programs that we do, all the different work that we carry out, and the CPDs in terms of our own skills and development. That's all got to be there. It's got to be saved somewhere, recorded when they do it, and why they need it, that sort of thing. So those are the sorts of things that have come out really across the board on a lot on that from our own assessment. I haven't given you a status update yet because we kind of we're in the process of trying to get that together. So we'll probably September give you a bit more of an update as to where we're at, where there are, if we are going to be able to meet the criteria in terms of ethics training, confidentiality training. But there'll be a program in place, and we may not have done it all by then, but we'll know if we're booked onto anything or if there's any training that they do need. Those skills gaps will be identified, and I'll give you an update as we go along. And the other part of it as well, and I talked about, so internal audit teams have to have, every 5 years we have to have an external quality assessment, which is that someone comes in and gives us a review. We are, as I've mentioned before, we were waiting for the SIPFA's update on the global standards, so we were already non-compliant with that, so we were out of that timeline. So we are due one. We are meant to have one next year, but I suppose I'm putting the question to the committee in terms of, with LGR coming up, we've got less than 2 years probably. We will go, and we're happy to go through the assessment, but they can be expensive and time consuming. I suppose my question is, should we be doing that at this time? When in 2 years' time it's obsolete anyway, because the team won't exist in its current form, and it will need another assessment anyway. So I suppose, is it something that we could do or should do? Is it the best use of resources at the moment? I mean, we're happy to take either way at the moment. I suppose I'm just putting the question out there. Is it? How do you feel about that? So quite happy to take any questions on that at all. Yeah.
You don't have to do it in 26, 27, but more we're talking about 27, 28.
Yeah.
So, Sarah, do you have any information?
Yeah, well, it's not really in the remit of external audit to comment on, but I did, after we had that conversation yesterday, I did research it and look it up. It is absolutely a requirement to have one every 5 years.
Yeah.
When was the last time you had one?
I think it was probably due just before April 25, but we delayed it because we were waiting, because it changed from the public sector internal audit standards to the global, so we delayed it to do it now, I guess. So it is due. So
our view is always to be compliant with the requirements, but obviously that's a decision you guys have to make from a financial point of view. But it is absolutely a requirement. So
yeah.
And also, were you able to find out what other authorities are doing?
I haven't been made aware of any other authorities that are planning to not do it. But I haven't specifically gone around and asked what is it, because I don't, everyone's time frame might be slightly different, so it might not be that other people are due at this time and having to make that decision in the kind of 2 year span.
Yeah, just in the conversation, in a way, is it sounds like, don't put words in your mouth. You'd be comfortable if we can give you the comfort of what we plan on doing. I think in that sense, then we've got a meeting in March. March might be a bit too early, but I think your point, Chairman, around do you know enough to make a decision? And I think the point you made around what others are doing as well, because there's always a comfort in that, isn't there? And how they squared that off in terms of, if we don't do it, what are the consequences? And you can always bridge it. There's always alternatives, isn't there? Possibly. We might sort of do that investigation and actually go, we might come to the conclusion that it's not possible to bridge it in a satisfactory way. So in that sense, then we'll bring something back we'll have a look. We'll do some reviews and bring some bit more information back on, and build on that. If you're happy with that, Craig.
Yeah, that's fine.
Try for March, but if not, we've got a meeting in June, haven't we?
Yes,
Which
yeah.
we can have a look at and give you that assurance around that, and then take a view. Because you'd probably ask us for what we're recommending to you as well. So if you're happy to do that, we'll bring that back soon.
Chair. So sorry. So when is the 5 years up?
It's already up, yeah.
It's already up.
So the reason why we didn't do it last time was because I think it literally fell on. So the public sector internal audit standards were the old ones, which is what we were compliant with, and then it was moving to the global standards where they changed it all. But CIPFA hadn't released their view on the global ones yet. So because we have to wait for CIPFA's view on that. We didn't do it because we needed that, which came out in April. So the next stage was to then just go through this process, do the assessment, and then look to doing the external quality assessment. But obviously with LGR, in light of LGR, that's another thing to add to that in terms of it's something where if you're going to spend anywhere between £6,000 and £12,000 to do this, and it's only going to last you a year or two at max, it's in terms of, yes, we wouldn't be compliant, but we can look at what the risks are of that and go back and find out what other authorities might be doing that are in the same situation. So it's just it's not a case of not wanting to do it, because we wouldn't be worried about having that assessment. It's just, is it the best time? It's timing, I guess, is the main issue for us.
So really going back to what Richard said, then looking at alternatives, Richard, is that what you're?
Yeah. I think what we've done, we've probably raised a lot of questions, haven't we?
Yeah.
That we put into go away and answer. I think, and they're going to say always what and what others are doing, as well as always comfort. Let's do that then. But in principle, you sort of, the discussion is, we need to give you that comfort and assurance that it will be the right thing to do, and how do we, given what the consequences?
Yeah.
What are the consequences?
Because is there a little bit of wriggle room? And obviously taking into Sarah's comments that if it's legislation, then is there any wriggle room within that legislation? And if we need to do an assessment, is there any economy version? So would we have to do the full assessment?
Yes. Assessment light, if possible. Let's have a look at that. I think we've got quite a few questions to come back to you with answers back. Yeah.
Yeah. So very much a discussion, and having a good discussion.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'm not keen on the idea of bridging the gap without knowing more, which I think that's important. I also think are there risks actually at this stage that scheduling of LGR may change, may not come forward? How does that feed into any discussions that you might have? And it needs to be on the list, if you like. So yeah, I'm leaning quite strongly towards, I feel it's something that we should do because we are supposed to do it. We don't know what the consequences are, and there are other risks around it.
I was just going to say, Geeta, that I've posed that question to one of my internal audit colleagues. So when he gets back to me, I'm happy to share with you that information as well.
No, thank you. I mean, for me, I'm open and transparent about everything with you. I think it's always good to have the discussions. It's not legislation that we have to do it. It's the standards that we have to adhere to. But yeah, happy to any further information. We'll go away. We'll get as much as we can. But it's just one of those where it could be a short period of time. So I just wanted to put it out there. We can discuss it. If you want us to do it, we're more than happy to go for it. So that's fine.
So
sorry, I don't know the answer to that at the moment, because I don't know anyone else at the moment who might be in this similar situation. So we can find that out.
Thank you. So just to explain, obviously the council is has its own building control service. We deal with the building control applications that come to us. They don't just come to us; they can go to private companies as well. But all of those, including us, are subject to the arm of the Health and Safety Executive, which is the building safety regulator. Now, they are relatively newly set up. They haven't been around for long. And they have very quickly put together a number of operational standard rules, which are changing definition sort of month by month. And then, of course, they're also required to conduct an audit for the entire country. So, and we happen to be the first 24 to get done first. So that is essentially what started to happen December 24 and first half of last year. And the result essentially has been that we did come across a few matters that needed resolving. And I'll just go through those with you very quickly, as detailed in the report. Ultimately, one criticism of tendering was that we hadn't got everything written down in terms of the procedure. Our position on that was that ultimately we weren't doing anything wrong, we just hadn't written it all down. But also, when you have a health and safety executive that have just changed over to the building safety regulator and they hadn't got all their guidance out yet, we were catching up to what they wanted. So it's a very simple matter that we have now closed that issue because we now have a new procedure guide, a guide that has been put in place. The other thing that we do in building control is we outsource to Baber and Mid Suffolk District Council. They are our partners. The reason we do that is because we don't have enough resource in-house. We have 3 building inspectors. Because the building safety regulator changed all the rules about who could go on site, you now have to be graded 1 to 4. And our current officers are only graded grade 1 and grade 2. Effectively meaning that there is a whole chunk of commercial work and other work that we are not possibly able to do legally now because of the rule change. And there's nobody, unless you're paying £80,000 or more, out there to employ. So on that basis, we created a partnership with Baber and Mid Suffolk, who do have the relevant grade officers, and they do plan checking for us and occasional site visits for us because we are not legally able to do those. Now, our assumption in terms of the audit that went through was that because they are as regulated as we are, our procedure between the two was fine, but it wasn't good enough for the audit. We now have to check on some of their work that comes back to us and make sure that they declare exactly which grade officer dealt with which piece of work. So to solve that, we have got a piece of paperwork now in place that has been agreed, and they now have to effectively sign up to exactly what they did with the piece of work that we gave them, and that is part of our new procedure. So we've dealt with that, but that was one error that got pulled out of the audit. And then finally, the last piece was We did miss this one, we have to admit. So under one of the standards, there is a requirement. So when we consult the fire service, and they come back to us with their comments on a building control application, we are supposed to go back to them and say that we agree with their comments. We do actually agree with their comments. We've never found a reason not to agree with the fire service, because ultimately if they tell us something's going to not be good enough for fire service, we're going to say we're not going to approve it. But we have to now tell them that we agree with them, as well as tell them when we don't agree with them. I'll leave you to make sense out of that, but we now have to do that, so we now do. But we didn't realise we had to do that before. In a nutshell, that's the three main matters. Just on one last procedural point, in law, we're not allowed to close any building control application, which means in tendering we've kept them open. Because of course, someone building a new house could stop and then not carry on for another 5 years, and then carry on building it after 5 years of putting it, doing whatever. They may run out of money, they may do whatever. The choice of how quick a building goes up is up to the developer, not up to us. So building control applications can span 5 years, 10 years. They're not dealt with like planning in 8 weeks. So ultimately, we can't legally close any of these down. But a new rule that came out just as the audit was being undertaken was that the building regulator now expects us to have a closure procedure, even though it has no basis in law. So we made one up, and they have approved it. But my criticism of that, which has gone back to them, is that every authority and every private firm will have a different criteria and different procedure for closing down cases. Therefore, the inconsistency across the country will be whatever it is. And I don't think that's quite the way they want to go about it, but we'll see if anything changes in the next couple of years. So that's it in a nutshell. We have therefore got an updated procedure manual with those extra pieces in, and we had a letter back from the BSR on the 12th of January, which has confirmed that they are happy and the matter is now concluded and that audit has ended. And we have now complied with all relevant professional codes and standards at this moment in time.
Thank you. Similar question to Damien's in some respects. In respect of those procedural changes, can you assure us that there are management processes in place to ensure that those new procedures will be followed moving forwards?
Well, the good thing is, 3 months before the audit started, we have now got a lead officer in our admin team for building control, and his primary responsibility is to deal with the 4 audits a year that are now required, because we are both a member of the local authority building control team and their quality management team, as well as obviously needing to go back to the BSR every quarter. So his primary responsibility is to ensure that all of that work is carried out and deals with the new processes that we've put in place as part of that process note. So his responsibility is, for the majority of his job, is to run that now. So yes, we can certainly give you that assurance.
Yeah. Thanks for that, John. I can't find where contravention is mentioned. For instance, people have gone against planning applications and they've been reported. I know we do get a list through periodically, and I just wondered that some of those are quite a long time scale. So is that covered by
Contraventions in building control, or do you mean enforcement planning?
Yeah, well, yes, somebody has obviously gone against the planning application.
Yep, separate, sorry, totally
Is it?
separate. Yep. So planning enforcement is not anything to do with building control enforcement. Building control enforcement is ultimately if they've built a building not in compliance with building regulations and therefore needs a contravention notice to correct. We do we do record all those. They are separate. There's not many of them, to be fair, but they are a separate part of the job role for building control, and they are covered by our adopted policy for building control enforcement. Planning enforcement, in terms of planning applications and whether they put a house up when they shouldn't have done and haven't got permission for it, is separate in its both in terms of the act and the team. Okay.
Thank you. Just out of curiosity, if you can't close something down, what happens if, say, it's still there going through 5, 6, 7 years later, and things change within that time? Then what happens? Can you go back and enforce that and say you need to now apply to the new rules, or do the old ones stand?
So this is where there's a grey area. Let's put it this way. We had 2,500 open cases at the beginning of this. We now only have, because we've hibernated the majority of them, we've decided to call it hibernation rather than closure, because ultimately there is a legality that you still can't officially legally close a case. So we are now into the word hibernation. So we've hibernated the majority of them. So we've now only got 500 active cases at this moment in time. For the cases that obviously you have to deal with the building regulations that apply at the time the application is submitted. So if a case is 10 years old, you're still dealing with the regulations of 10 years ago for that particular case, no matter how slow they may be building that development. You can't retrospectively apply later building control standards or regulations. So if you started building your bungalow 10 years ago, your insulation standards will be X. If you start building your bungalow today and a new application today, your insulation standards will be a lot more. But unfortunately, that is the nature of the thing. But there is a point of the grey area is there is a requirement after 4 years, if they've done nothing on site, that we can charge them again for coming out, because that's a whole new regime of fee charging, but the regulations we have to deal with stay in situ to when they first applied. Planning is perhaps even worse, because there's no remit to even go back on a fee. Ultimately, in planning, once you have started, you have your permission forever. So I suppose that's similar to building control. And I think the oldest case I ever came across was in 1975, where they did build did permission for 4 bungalows. They built 3, but they didn't build the 4th one until 2015. Ultimately, the ironic thing was they wanted to change the design, and we said no, that would need a new application. So they built a 1970s bungalow. This
Yep. So this report sort of bringing up the rear ironics. It kind of collects all the kind of outstanding bits and pieces we're providing back and comments back to the audit committee. So you've got no real change. Fairly quiet report, this one. We've got the various appendices that pick up outstanding issues, and we'll update it in terms of the accounts and the recommendations that came from external audit reports as well as necessary. As I said, some of those are ongoing. So fairly quiet in the sense that sort of brief updates of where we are. Nothing really major to raise at this point. A couple of bits in the main body of the report talks about local audit reform. So we'll provide further updates. There was nothing that's of note to sort of provide now, but we'll keep you updated as that government works their way through in implementing the local audit office. And from sort of more of a personal perspective as well, but there's about recruitment of an independent person and the recommendation that we're looking for the Audit Committee to make to the to full council. And I'm just going to sort of say from my perspective, from the officer on the interview panel, it was great to meet Sue, who great knowledge and experience, and we're fortunate, I think, that she's happy to support the council. So that's from my perspective, but I know others on the interview panel. So we're looking for that recommendation on the full council, and hopefully Sue will join us probably June, yeah.
No, I'm happy to go with the recommendations as per page 73, having sat on the interview panel with yourself and Graham, Karen and Richard. Yeah, good fit. So happy to recommend. Thank you.